I'm gonna show you how to turn this table
to this table here, and finally to this table here.
So let's get started. Okay, we painted it mint green. It doesn't really matter what direction you go because, like I said, when you're done, you can sand it to just a nice smooth finish. Your first coat of chalk paint isn't necessarily gonna look good, okay? But the second and third coat, or second coat, just depending, will look wonderful. One cool thing about chalk paint is it dries fast. So sometimes by the time you're done, like say painting the top of something and you've already painted the bottom of it, the bottom's dry. So then you can just go back and do your second coat right there. Paint can take up to 25 days or so to cure, just depending on the paint. So, it's dry, but cure means like all the way dry, all the way hard, all the way good. So just keep that in mind when you're first using your furniture, no matter what kind of paint. It's not just chalk paint, any kind of paint. We've all got paint on us. It's really fun. It's like zen. It's very relaxing. And then I went back and I used a darker color and I did some dry brushing. And dry brushing is just how it sounds. You basically just take a paintbrush that is dry and dip it into paint and then just wipe as much paint off of the brush as you can. And then you just very gently drag the brush across the piece. So let me kind of give you a close-up here of what that looks like. See how there's these little paint marks across. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just taking, I have a little bit of the paint in the lid, so I'm just gonna run it across. As you can see, let me zoom you out. It looks pretty cool. What I like about the glazing is this is before the glazing, and this is after the glazing. And I really like how it just kind of tones the color down a little bit. Bright colors are great, don't get me wrong, and some of my stuff is kind of bright. But I like the glazing because it tones it down, and it just gives it that like antique-y kind of look. For today, we are going to need 20 grit sandpaper. Now, like I said before, with glazing, it generally is used to bring out all the little nooks and crannies of an item. This doesn't have nooks and crannies, but I wanted the look. If I would have just put the glaze over this, it would have just kind of tinted it all just a little bit darker. However, using this 20 grit sandpaper is going to allow me to give this table some little nooks and crannies for the glaze to go into. So I get that look of, you know, layered color. Complete, layered color, not complete. When you're doing your glazing, this type of glazing anyway, you want to make sure that if you have done any other kind of painting or dry brushing or whatever, that this sandpaper that you're using, your 20 grit, you can actually see the paper between the grit. I use this paper when I'm really trying to get some paint off of something, or you know, really trying to sand, but I don't use it that much for sanding. I use it more for techniques. All right. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do, it would be super excellent if you subscribed. If you think that one of your friends is gonna like the video, you know, share it with a friend. Just keep watching to see how I do what I do. Run the sandpaper just from one end to the next across the table. You want to start right at the edge and go right to the next edge. You don't want to start in the middle because you'll be able to see it and it won't look good. So I'm going to start edge to the next edge. And what this is doing is leaving an indentation of that sand in the table that you can't really see until you put the glaze on it, which will soak down in or sink down in to all of those little nooks and crannies that you've just created. Now after you've gone all the way through, and you've done it from edge to edge, you can then go back and just kind of, maybe I want a little bit more right here. Maybe I want a little bit more right there. Maybe more right there, right here. Hi. One thing that I forgot to mention in the process of this table, so after we painted it with the mint paint and then I went back and dry brushed it with a sage color, I then put a clear coat on it and I let that clear coat dry at least overnight. I am using chalk paint. I will also put a link to the previous video that I made in the description so you can check that out as well. With chalk paint, if you just go to put wax or glaze or really anything on the painted surface before you seal it, that chalk paint is just gonna soak it up. It just soaks it up. So if you want your glazing to be like super duper dark and almost cover all of your paint, then you don't have to worry about putting a clear coat on it. If you're using a lighter color of, for me I use varnish to glaze, so we'll talk about that. If you're using a lighter or thinner color of varnish, then you're not gonna have to worry about putting a clear coat over it. I am using a very, very thick varnish. It's from Rustoleum, and I'll show you guys. And this is like the hardiest, thickest varnish I've ever used. And for me, I would rather just buy varnish because I can use it, one, to stain things, and then two, I also use it for glazing. There is special stuff you can buy for glazing, there's special wax for glazing, there's all kinds of those things. And honestly, I couldn't tell you the price of those. All I know is I like my technique. So once again, this is DIY, my way. I'm an only child, it's all about me, and it always will be. So here we go, let's get started. Just going wiping it down, wiping it down. I'm then going to, and this is just personal preference, so you know, whatever you want to do is fine, but this is what I'm doing with my project. I'm going to go along the edges and just do a little light distressing. There's several different ways to distress, and I will show you guys all of those things too. I enjoy public speaking. I used to be a trainer at a call center and a supervisor for many years. I really do enjoy teaching. For some strange reason, I just can't find a job that says looking for someone to record videos where you're making furniture and then sell the furniture. Like that, there's not an ad on Monster for that. So I'm like, I'm gonna do it myself. When I get done with the distressing part, the removing of the paint from the edges, I am going to go back over it with a higher grit of sandpaper, so you can feel where I ran this across. You could start with a lower grit of sandpaper, unless your project really crazy needs to be sanded. 20 grit is not enough. And then when you end your project, you want to end with a higher grit. And when it's your final coat and you're getting ready to do that final sanding to make everything really smooth, you want to use something around 400 grit. Here is a close-up of my edge sanding. As you can see, it's pretty rough, and as you can see, I've been staining things. That's why my hands are all stained. I don't wear gloves. I suggest you wear gloves. So I just kind of rough that up. This is the before, and this is the after. Okay, so all the places on this where you see it has a little bit darker stain are where the grit had taken off that clear coat, so the glazing could get to the actual wood. I wiped down the table with a wet rag, I let it dry, and I just opened the stain that I'm going to be using for my glazing. This is Rustoleum. The color is Kona. This is the thick stuff. So this is the stuff if you're going to use for glazing, you really need to make sure and put a clear coat on first, or it'll just completely soak into your paint. Okay? But this stuff is awesome. I love it. I never know where to set my paint or my stain because I'm always worried that I'm gonna kick it over and spill it because I've never done that before. I have myself a little rag here. It's some old clothes. I am very thrifty. I'm just gonna dip my rag in the stain. I encourage you to wear gloves, so just don't do what I do, just do what I say. Alright, so we're just gonna get started. We're gonna wipe it on. And as you can see, it goes on very, very dark. And if we were not to have clear coated the top, it would pretty much stay about this dark. So you don't want that. Or maybe you do want that, but if you do want that, then you might as well just stain the wood to begin with, or paint it brown to begin with. time constraint on this. I mean, you don't want to take too long to get this on and get it off, because the longer it sits, the darker it will get. But as you can see right here, this part right here is starting to match the table in the back, which you can barely see, but it is, trust me. And I like to just kind of wipe it on, and before I get to my next section, I just wipe it off. If you leave it on longer, it will get darker, which if that is the look you are going for, then you can experiment with different amounts of time to leave your glaze or stain on. And if you're not thinking I might want to buy that table, you should be thinking, I might want to buy that table. At first, it might look a little messy, and you might think, oh my gosh, looks like we're putting mud on it. But in the very end, it is going to turn out wonderful. Just for the record, obviously this isn't a sponsored video, so I'm not like I'm getting paid by Rustoleum to sell their product, though I do love it. Though, if I could get enough of you to subscribe, I could have sponsored videos, so places like Rustoleum would give me the product, and then I could show you how wonderfully it worked. So just saying, I saw somewhere on YouTube that, because you know, you believe everything you hear on the internet, giving or being nice to people actually helps you feel better as well. So if you would like to give me the gift of subscribing to my channel, that would help me, and it would help you. I don't really care. I'm just having some fun, and I want to show you guys how I'm doing it. My last boss told me the company owned me. Oh no, you do not. I'm gonna own myself. I'm gonna redo furniture. Rub it till you think it looks good.
For the record, my channel is family friendly.
How to apply glaze to furniture using stain. How to get more depth. By depth I mean like more colors coming through. So it's not just one color with like a shade over it. It's several different colors. And see here, now you can see where my scratches are. Right here, you see this line right here? That was a scratch from the sandpaper. And the glaze went into that scratch. If you look at this line here, that's another scratch. I mean, there's several. I mean, there's here. It's, as you saw, I ran it across the whole thing, but I wanted to show you. That's why some of it is darker, because I scratched it to give it a little bit of relief so the glaze would stick. I would like to thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, all that stuff that all the other YouTuber people say to do. It'd be great, and you can friend me on my Facebook page and say, you know, I saw your video, I want to follow you, you know, totally cool. Once again, thank you for watching, and have a fantastic day. Over and out. Stay on my hand.